Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis. What's it like to be great at setting boundaries at camp?
This is CampHacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
A big thanks to our sponsors who make the CampHacker podcast possible. Imagine camp registration software that actually gives you more time to do what you love. With UltraCamp, you can effortlessly track attendance, manage staff, streamline registration, and more. Explore now at ultracampmanagement.com/camphacker. Why spend hours on your schedules only to find mistakes and missed activities for your campers? Let Camptivities do the heavy lifting and help you create the best schedule yet, without the mistakes and in less time. Come check out Camptivities, specifically designed for camps by camp people. Find out more at camptivities.com.
Hello, Camp Mavericks, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast, brought to you by UltraCamp and Camptivities, and the brand new camp recruiting and retention playbook from Joanna Warren-Smith and me. I'm Travis Allison. I'm a summer camp marketing and strategy consultant.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hudson. I am the founder of Camp Highlight, the sleepaway camp for kids with LGBTQ parents, the best camp in the world. And when I'm not being fabulous, I am a camp trainer and consultant.
Hey, everybody. I am Kyrah Altman. I am the founder and board president of Let's Empower, Advocate, and Do, also known as LEAD in the camp industry. We developed the nation's first mental health training tailored to camp counselors and staff. And we also do a lot of work in the DEI realm through the unique lens of mental wellness and mesh. Happy to be here.
And we are great to have you. Welcome, Kyrah. For those of you listening, I just want to say from the very beginning, as is the beginning of I think it's our 13th season.
Oh my, it's a lucky number.
In this show, I just want to say from the beginning, still at this point in our podcasting journey, reviews are still important. And so we'd be super grateful if you went to ratethispodcast.com/camp, click on the ratings and reviews button for whichever app you listen to us on. Kyrah, thanks for joining us for this and for being a part of suggesting this topic as well. I'm super grateful for that. Before we dig in, can you tell me a bit about how you got connected to summer camp?
Sure. So my relationship with summer camp is a very interesting one. It's a very complicated one. Of course, growing up, I always wanted to attend overnight summer camp. It's kind of that dream. Once you see the Lindsay Lohan, at camp situation, you're like, yes, I want to go. And I was able to go because my father could afford it. And so he sent me for 2 weeks to Camp Birch Hill in New Durham, New Hampshire. And it was a really hard 2 weeks, mostly because I came from a much lower socioeconomic status than a lot of my peers. And also because I had grown up in a very violent and toxic households, not with my father, but with other family members. And so I was experiencing a lot of symptoms of PTSD, and including nightmares and flashbacks and things that staff just weren't prepared to handle. And so it created a lot of isolation, and I felt very ostracized. I went back to camp one more year, but similar things happened, and I never went back. So there was a lot of sadness in so much of what I wanted to enjoy felt out of reach because of some of the mental health challenges I was dealing with. And so that's really what has created and fueled that love for camp, but also the love for improving culture at camp.
Right. So, Kyrah, it sounds to me like it's not necessarily on you and the things that you were going through as a child, but it's on the institution and how it set its staff up for this.
Totally. And I will say last year, Camp Birch Hill, my former camp, was the first camp to sign on with us for training and certification in that year. So we've worked with them for a few years now. Their director, Chrissy, is incredible. And they've come a long way, like most camps in the industry. I also will say, even as an adolescent, I recognized that it wasn't that the staff didn't care. They cared so much, but they had absolutely no training and no tools to respond to some very atypical triggered traumatic behaviors that I was showing that were also scaring other campers. So at the end of the day, the institutions need those tools to allow the good of camp to be accessible to more folks.
Yeah, that's great. And so what brought you back later to say, I want to serve that? Like, I feel like there was something that got you started down this road of your professional life as an adult.
Well, I don't like seeing problems that I know I can fix or at least start to address. And so I've always had that entrepreneurial brain, and I immediately began looking into programs. So one of the earliest things I did was I became a youth mental health first aid instructor.
Mm-hmm.
And then I very quickly, after providing that for a few years to camps, learned about the downfalls or the limitations of that curriculum within the camp space. And so and then that really fueled our launching of camp mental health certification tailored to the very unique camp setting. So there's been a lot of learning, a lot of ups and downs throughout that journey, but it has really allowed me to understand that camp needs something special, needs a tailored approach.
Yep.
And we have the tools and experience to provide that.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your camp story, Kyrah. Thank you. Today, we are going to talk about stuff that parallels exactly this experience. We're going to talk about, parallels in lots of ways, but it's a great jumping off point from Kyrah's story. We're talking today about setting boundaries. And I certainly think of that as protecting myself, but I think we're going to spend some time exploring how that protects the institution as well by protecting the leadership. Chris, is there something that you can start us off with, some ways of thinking about this?
I want to start by saying I love boundaries. I love them. Like, I'm in love with them, and it's the thing that we overlook so much. Listen, first of all, I want to start by saying, and no one listening to this is going to disagree, but camp, this industry, this is a professional industry. It's not a hobby. It's not a club. It's not a gang, right? We work, we move forward as an industry. And I think because it's not a 9-to-5 sort of situation, because it's not a 9-to-5 situation, I think sometimes we, and not just the camp industry, a lot of industries like, oh, when you're here, you're a family, which honestly, given, if I can borrow Kyrah, like your story, being like a family is not necessarily a great thing. Okay. It's not necessarily something you want to hold up and could be triggering to a lot of people. The point being that if this is a professional concern, we have to have boundaries to protect ourselves. And like you suggested, Travis, protect the work that we're doing, protect the institutions that we're working in. And I know it can be hard because from when we're very young, we're not really taught a lot about setting boundaries with people, especially authority figures. But I think, my experience working with camp, my experience as a counselor, setting boundaries with the people who were supervising me was really important. As a young person, we had adults who were line leaders or camp directors who wanted to interact with me in a way that was not professional by dint of my age or maybe lack of experience. And at that time, I didn't have the tools. Now that I'm on the other end as a director, I'm very, very mindful of how I set boundaries with my staff, checking in with them about those boundaries and being really intentional about that in starting the interview, I ask about people's boundary setting. I ask about how they respond when their boundaries are, being tromped over, through the training to the in-service at camp. And then also, the post-interview after camp, after the season's over, we return people and be like, that's one of the questions we ask is like, how did you feel about the interactions? How did you feel about me as a supervisor? Tell me more about that. I honestly, it's something that has to be focused on. It's not something that's just going to happen. and especially a lot of the young people we're working with, they don't have the experience of setting boundaries. And hell, they may not have had a lot of job experience for this. The onus is on us to really introduce that to them.
I think that last point's a great one. More and more camp staff, this is their first job. I think when, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, camp staff would have come of having some job experience. And so they would have just an understanding of what it means to be in a workplace. Not necessarily one that had good boundaries, but there was just another step of understanding there before they come to us. So I appreciate the checking in. And I love, Chris, I'm curious to know how well it works as a supervisor. Are you saying, how well did I do with your boundaries? Maybe my real question is, how do you set it up so they'll answer that honestly?
I can encourage people to be honest. And I let people know it's important for the institution for me to have this information. At the end of the day, people are going to share what they're comfortable sharing. Right. Yep, but I think for our staff members who have stuck around for a while, they take it seriously and they take the relationship seriously. And also it's just when you are in an environment that is name checking boundaries and checking in about them, the only thing I can hope is that people are a little bit more forthcoming and talking about that and loosening that up and putting that out there.
Yeah, that's great. Kyrah, what do you think?
Yeah, so I wanted to share one of my favorite quotes of all time, and I share it as often and as regularly as I can, is a quote about boundaries, and it's, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." Prentice Hemphill. And I love this quote, "The distance that I can love you and me simultaneously."
I love that.
And so, yeah, and it really has transformed the way I teach boundary setting, the way that I apply it in my own personal life. And I think to answer your question, Chris, how do you, or Travis, to set up those conversations? I think you set it up maybe with that quote, but you share, I want to make space for you. And I want to make space for me. And by using boundaries, right, or by leveraging boundaries as a tool, we're able to honor both of us. We're able to make space for both of us to feel heard, even if we don't agree necessarily in a tough moment. So that's something that I wanted to share that I believe can really add vulnerability to the boundary conversation.
So, Kyrah, how do we teach people to do this better? This is really an overgeneralization, but we certainly see ourselves as an industry as being very caring people who try to do things with a lot of intentionality, but this is really an area that we are not doing well.
So the biggest misconception that I see when teaching this tool is that people think boundaries are about influencing the behavior of other people, when it's not that at all. Boundaries are 100% in your control. They're about your behavior. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a staff member that's speaking pretty disrespectfully to you in team meetings in front of other people, really kind of pulling away from the camaraderie that you're trying to build at camp. Instead of saying to that staff member, "You cannot speak to me that way," right? Because that would be about that staff member. Instead, the boundary is, at camp, this is how we speak to one another, and if you don't abide by that, we need to talk about your place here at camp as a staff member. Or even saying something, if it's one-on-one, right? I will not allow you to speak to me like that. So if you begin speaking disrespectfully to me, I will respectfully walk away until you're ready to continue the conversation in a healthier way. So again, it's not about influencing them. If a boundary relies on the other person to do something, it's not an effective one. An effective boundary relies on you to be able to walk away if that person or that situation is occurring.
The issue here that I'm hearing it in what I said and what you just said is that I want to go back to the fact that a lot of the people that are being supervised in these situations are young people, not a lot of job experience. On top of that, as I always point out, they're coming right from academic situations where the emphasis on authority and top-down information delivery is so encoded in them.
Yeah.
The idea of maybe pushing back against a boundary or announcing that they are not comfortable in a calm way. Sometimes I worry that they don't have access to that. So it's really like an intro to setting boundaries, I find, with the younger staff. Because before we get to like the boundary setting, it's sort of like, it's okay to contradict me. It's okay to have feelings about the way that I treat you. And it's okay to express those feelings, not to your colleagues, right? Venting is fine, but that it can't end there. Right. It's important for our relationship and for this endeavor that you communicate that back to me. That in and of itself is an education that is part of this discussion, but is kind of the preamble to it.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a critical piece of the puzzle. I think if you don't start there, you're not giving people the tools, the access to know how to express that. I will also say that I think that there is power in modeling boundary setting that goes way beyond supporting yourself too. So I think as a leader, if a leader at camp can model boundary setting for themselves in a public way, it also gives staff, gives campers, gives other people permission to do the same, because you're even using the language that you want to encourage them to use in similar situations. So I think that modeling piece is also powerful and a gift that we don't often think about. We know that young people are more likely to model or to replicate what we do than to listen to what we say.
Yeah.
And so I think that piece is also big here.
And that's not like, can I tell you a real quick story? Once in college, I had come back to the dorm. I'd just gone grocery shopping, and the girl lived across the hall. A bunch of people were in my room. She's like, "Oh God, I'm so hungry. Can I have some bread?" And I said, No, you can't. And she's like, "It's right there." I said, "Yeah, but it's mine and you can't have it." And, I just went about, and can I tell you, I was like, what, 20? 4 years ago, a friend of mine said, "Do you remember we were in your room and Karen came across the hall and asked?" I said, vaguely. And he was like, "That was really powerful for me to see that, because you just said no and moved on." So that's just to your point, Kyrah, about how modeling is real. I mean, think of that lesson persisted for 25 years for this person or more.
Yeah. And let me tell you, sometimes the people that set the strongest boundaries with me annoy me beyond belief, but I respect them so much more, right? So I don't want to sugarcoat this, right? Sometimes when when boundaries are set against you, it feels like, why can't I have that bread? It's right there in front of me. But at the same time, it's such a beautiful lesson of, wow, like, good for that person. People can do that. It's not a bad thing to do that.
Right.
And it makes you that much more excited to keep practicing it with other people in your life. So love that, obsessed with that, and hate when it happens to me, but then love it 5 seconds later. It just takes the 5 seconds of grumbling, and then I'm like, keep doing it, do more. I love it. It fuels me.
Every year, it's the same thing. Lots of hours spent working on the daily schedules, only to find mistakes, missed activities, and lots of stress along the way. Why is it so difficult? There's got to be a better way. And there is. Camptivities, an activity scheduler made specifically for camps by camp people. Group scheduling or camper scheduling, they've got you covered. Different day schedules, no problem. Auto scheduling, you got it. Elective scheduling, yep. Batch scheduling, of course. Schedule the way that works for your camp. With over 50 different reports, you'll be able to see the data easily. So, when a parent calls and says their camper didn't get an activity week 1, pull up the group activity tracker and see exactly when that activity was scheduled all summer long. Modernize the way you do activity scheduling. Make it easier to collaborate with team members. Get rid of the mistakes and make sure your campers are getting to all the activities your camp has to offer. We'd love to show you the next big thing in camp. So don't wait until the new year. Start the onboarding process now and save 15% for the first year. Visit Camptivities.com to set up a time to chat. Let them help you get away from your desk and back out into camp.
There's something that came up in some of the stuff that both of you have said that I want to spend a bit of time with. And maybe this is something we co-host with the Campco podcast because it suits their bailiwick so well. It involves just a very basic thing of teaching people to have conversations with each other respectfully and getting hard stuff across. And me saying that I'm uncomfortable with what just happened privately, not to shame that person in public. When what people are experiencing so much these days is purposeful shame, public shaming of others. And so they just just so much shame. But having a conversation. I know for the past 30 years, we have said, if you have a problem with that person, please go talk to them. Or we will help facilitate that, but please go talk to them. And for 30 years, I have watched young and old adults just give themselves incredible pain to avoid having that uncomfortable conversation. And so I think we have to break it down. We have to show them those conversations because it's going to help them for the rest of their lives. And that's what we are at about Camp People, is teaching these young adults how to do well in the world. But I think we have to go so much handholding to get that started, to set up a place where they can just deal with uncomfortable situations with one another, because that allows us to be comfortable to set boundaries and deal with the fallout of that.
So Travis, then you're suggesting where the real education just comes with having people be comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This is really funny that you should bring this up, because in looking at training for my camp next year, the one thing we're trying to set up is how to introduce that to young people who, like I said, are fresh off of a 12 or 16 year experience where they're told quite the opposite.
Right.
So where do we even begin with saying, no, discomfort's good. And it's okay if you experience discomfort with me as your authority figure. I want you to tell me. For a lot of our line staff, this is the first time they've heard such a thing.
Yeah.
Depending on who their parents are, sure, but it's probably the first time a lot of people have heard such a thing. How do we get them to that point? Sure, I hope that all staff stay for 4, 5, 6, 7 years. But is there like a crash course thing? Is there a way to get young people comfortable with discomfort?
Yeah. And there's a thing.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a thing that Dr. G says that I'm sure is not hers, but I've heard her say it so many times, I always associate it with her, is that we have to have people understand that being uncomfortable is very different from being unsafe. And we cannot get through life without being uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean you're not safe. And sure, that's partly, it's 50-50 between the person you're having the conversation with, and there's a risk of it being unsafe, but it doesn't have to, it's not the first thing. Yeah.
Well, I also wanted to add what's really interesting, responding to both of you, is that this last season of summer camp training, Lead's most popular DEI training was around having difficult conversations, versus the year before, it was focused, our most popular by far was focused on intervening if a microaggression is heard or seen. And so it was also very interesting to see that significant shift in topic desire just from one year to the next.
I saw the same thing, Kyrah. That's astounding.
Right. And I think a lot of it, I think, stems from the political divide in our country, to be completely honest, because in these conversations with camp leaders and staff, before we would bring in the training, they would say, everyone's just getting in fights. Everyone's just arguing and disagreeing. And a lot of the time it's about political things. And so figuring out that piece is important. Now, I would love to say I have all the answers as far as how to teach that, because I definitely don't, and have learned a lot, even in just the last year of experimenting with different camp groups. What I will say, though, is to tie us back to the boundary conversation. When you teach young people the yes and tool, you're able to let them see that their feelings, their opinions may be valid, and so might someone else's. And just like that quote, right? I can make space and love you and make space and love me at the same time. So I think part of this solution is figuring out, how do we accept that two things can exist at once, and then respect it, not walk away thinking, if you don't agree with me, then something's wrong or I wasn't heard. Because that's not being heard, that's being agreed with.
We're touching on boundaries, but I think we all agree there's a lot more to be done before boundaries. But assuming that your camp has put the effort into that, or is being conscientious of that and intentional, what does a good boundary look like? Let me start there.
Honestly, I mean, well, that's a great question. It's also broad, but I'm going to just jump in here. I think a good boundary, I think about just how I interact with the staff. It's letting them know. I talked about pre-work before you get there. Sometimes when I'm giving direction, or I'm like being very specific, I'm doing bullet points with the staff, like, remember to do this, 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 this. Every now and then, Randall, I'll check in and be like, I just want to check in. That interaction, like me interacting with you, tell me, how do you feel about it? It's a question that most people don't get, and for the most part, the first couple of times, they're like, eyes go wide. Fine. It was fine. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll say, I just want to check in because, like, look, we all get lost sometimes. And my baggage is that sometimes I can be a little demanding, and it's something I'm thinking about. So if at any point I come off that way, it would be super helpful to me if you just say, hey, Chris, you mentioned that sometimes you're a little demand. That's how I'm experiencing you. It's sort of like inviting them in, like, hey, I need your help to help me. So really what we're talking about is I'm educating them about boundaries without using the words or necessarily setting up a barrier, which is what people think boundaries are. People think barriers are like walls to keep people out. Yeah. And so instead of being like, oh, let's talk about boundaries and how we can, keep things separate. No, it's just more about, I would love your help in the way that I interact, not just with you, but with other people. And again, it gives them the freedom to also check in with people. And in our training, we say that too, like check in with your co at the end of the day. Be like, how do you think I did today? Not necessarily with the kids, but in this unit, what can we improve upon?
Kyrah, I know you have a point, and I come to you, but I'm worried I'm going to lose this thought. So sorry. My ADHD brain. This stuff stacks on stacks on stacks. So many different things. But part of it is what I heard you say, Chris, is you're able to hear people say to you, you come across as this, and you're able to, however that makes you feel in the moment, you're able to just sit with that and say it. But you are saying to somebody, I know, in my entire camp career, I have had to say to staff, I understand that I can be intimidating. And when you get to know me, that you don't feel that same way, but I understand that's the first thing. So let us work together. I will take on the most of that work so that you get to know me. And so that self-awareness is really, really interesting and hard to do, but it's listening to feedback, asking for feedback, see steps. You have to ask for feedback, and then you have to listen to it, and then you have to absorb it, and then you have to put it into practice. Kyrah, what are you thinking?
Yeah, thank you. And I love that you added that. So especially because it relates to something Chris said too. I think something that stood out to me from what both of you shared was Chris, in his example, was saying this, I'm curious how you're experiencing me. And Travis, you said, I can be this way, like in your examples. In both of those examples, you're giving yourselves space to be more than one thing, right? You're giving yourself space to be imperfect, complex humans who might have moments of being intimidating, and then also moments of total silliness where everyone feels like you're super approachable. But what you're doing is you're humanizing yourself, and you're also challenging, maybe without even knowing it, you're challenging this boxing in of people, this shame culture, this divide that we are seeing out everywhere else, right? On social media, in society, we like to say this person said this thing, so they're bad forever, period, that's it, or whatever that might be. And so you're challenging that idea that a person is one way and that's it. And you're also both modeling vulnerability. So to answer your question, Travis, what does a good boundary include? What does it sound like? It sounds vulnerable. So yes, we often think about boundaries like a wall, but it's actually more a door in a wall, right? So it's saying there's space in between us, but here is how you can access me. It's that vulnerability that gives you that door that allows you in. And it's so frustrating as the boundary setter because you don't want to be vulnerable, right? In this moment, you might even be feeling a little on edge or defensive, but vulnerability is the number one thing that's going to produce more vulnerability. And so that's, I
Smart,
think,
man.
the key ingredient here.
That was very well said. That was super well said.
Let me just,
I love that. The door
Well done.
in the wall.
We can't do it for you, but please do pat yourself on the back.
Yeah, the door on the wall is so good. And I think the more vulnerability is what I would call for. I think it's more vulnerability, especially from camp leaders who really do want to come across as sort of like, the buck stops here and I have everything under control. Great. And your staff needs to know that you have things under control. Okay, that's an important part of leadership, of course. But I think letting people know, as you said, Kyrah, like, hey, I'm not perfect all the time. And I'm still arriving. I'm 30 years into my camp career and I'm still arriving. I'm still learning things. The kids are teaching me things. This incoming generation of camp counselors are teaching me things. And I can acknowledge that without necessarily sacrificing my place at the top, or, it's not an admission that my experience adds up to nothing because I'm still questing. None of that. I think the vulnerability piece is really key. And like you said, inviting other people to be vulnerable and to stick up for themselves. The only thing I wanted to add is that sometimes I'll have staff come up to me and they're like, I need to tell you this thing that just happened. And I'll be like, I would love to hear it, but I don't have the capacity right now. I was like, I need a minute. Is there someone else you can talk to about that? And sometimes, to be honest, sometimes it's just because I don't want to hear it, because I know I'm going to have to do something and I'd rather the assistant director do something. Right. But also it's really good modeling because they're like, oh, of course. And sometimes I hear them use that language when I hear them use that language with each other, which sometimes, when it's crisis mode, it's less appropriate. But from moment to moment, I really enjoy hearing them speak to each other that way, especially in front of the kids, if we're talking about trickle down modeling.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great example of when you say it, you give others permission to do the same. So just to kind of some final thoughts on my end, how we do the work matters, right? How we do the work teaches other people about their value and about their abilities to set boundaries. And one of my favorite questions that I ask others and that I ask myself is, how will you show up for yourself today? Because you are responsible for you, right? Nobody else, at least in my experience of life, which is definitely tainted and traumatic, nobody else will show up for you. So how will you show up for you? And so acknowledging that and having an answer to that makes space for you to love yourself while also loving others. So that's my final closing out thought.
In fact, it is the topic closing out thought because it's so good. We'll leave it there. Thank you, Kyrah. I appreciate both of you for sharing your stories and bringing your wisdom to this discussion. I'm going to change modes now, and I'm going to take a second to thank UltraCamp for sponsoring the CampHacker podcast. UltraCamp has an offer exclusive to CampHacker listeners that allows you to discover the best marketing tools and apps for camps. They put it all together in a little bundle that's been updated for 2023-24. If you go to ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker, there you can download their free guide, The Marketing Toolbox. When you think about this job, do you remember, do you focus on, do you consider at a lot of moments in the day what drew you to the camp experience? UltraCamp knows it wasn't for paperwork. It wasn't for metrics. It wasn't for bookkeeping. That's why they have created an all-in-one platform to streamline your program management. You can say goodbye to the hassle of learning and managing multiple platforms to run your camp. With UltraCamp, you can effortlessly register and manage campers, generate and direct communication networks, organize schedules and activities, process payments and donations. UltraCamp's goal is to help their clients spend less time in the office and more time doing what they love. If you want to know if UltraCamp is right for you, please again go to ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. They offer free customized demo sessions so you can see their software in action. ultracampmanagement.com/CampHacker. And so now we move on to our tool of the week.
Tool of the week.
Chris, can I give you the first tool of the week of the season, please?
I don't think I've ever gone first. So this is a new era on the CampHacker podcast. So I want to thank God and the Academy. No. So I was recently traveling through Europe. Yes, I'm bragging. And I stopped by a bookstore in Rotterdam, and they had this series of books. And the series called the Big Idea series, a primer for the 21st century. And the books are all, okay, I'm going to be quick because I could gush about this. There's so much I like about this. Basically, it's just a book that explores different topics, usually around science or society. So some of the titles in the series are, Is Capitalism Working? Is Gender Fluid? Will AI Replace Us? Is Masculinity Toxic? This one that I'm reading is called Does Monogamy Work? And what I love about this book is that, and people are saying like, oh God, he's recommending a book. Let me tell you something. What's great about this book is that it's the way that it's written. I don't know if you can see this but the way that it's written in two different fonts. The paragraphs in larger font is like, listen, if you don't have a lot of time and you want to skim, you read this. When you have more time, come back and read the smaller font, which will be a deeper dive into the discussion. It makes it so accessible, especially for these huge questions that are being asked. I think it makes it really easy to digest. Why do I think this would make you a better camp director? One, I think education in general makes you a better camp director. Two, I think thinking about broad societal issues makes you a better camp director because we are preparing an entire generation for society. So asking questions like, is masculinity toxic? Is gender fluid? Directly impacts what we're doing with our young people. So I would check out any of the books. It's the Big Idea series.
That is great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Kyrah, what's your tool of the week?
Thank you. And I'm so excited to look into those books as well, Chris. I love a good open-ended question-ish that those books provide us-ish. Okay, so my tool of the week is, let me see. Chris showed me how to show all of you. Resurgence. So Resurgence is a burnout recovery journal. So for our camp professionals who have struggled over the last few years because our world has kind of turned upside down, many of us are feeling like that love for camp has slowly dwindled or has been beat out of us because of all of the blows that the industry has received. With that said, this journal offers you 100 original self-care challenges intentionally designed to help you heal and recover from burnout, specifically within the camp space. So you can either use this journal just as a journal, like the pages are blank, or you can actually go up to the top and you can follow along with the challenge. You can track your mood and also reflect on the love that you want to rediscover within camp. So that is my tool of the week. 100% of the proceeds go to lead a mental health nonprofit serving the camp community. So please check us out and buy on Etsy for free shipping.
Right on. Thank you. I'll have to make sure I get the Etsy link then, because I only had found it on Amazon. Thank you. Those are great. And congratulations on the book. I got it as soon as I saw it was out and read through it. It looks really great and really.
Have you started any challenges yet, Travis?
I have not. I'm at the moment trying to finish editing my own book.
Are you there?
It's so. Yeah.
I lost you. Did you start any challenges?
I have not. I'm eyeballs deep in editing my own book at the moment.
No worries.
And that's kind of my limit on actual reading. I can listen to stuff, but I can't read and process at the moment.
Fine,
No
guys.
worries.
I'll write a book too.
Well,
let me know once you do try the challenges, because they are very eye-opening. And sometimes practicing those challenges in the moments that you are super focused on something else is exactly when you need them. So definitely give it a look. Thank you for purchasing as well, Travis. And
of course. Yep. And I will also purchase yours, Chris, on the first day it comes out. I promise you. As soon as you said, I apologize for doing a book, Chris, I was like, did you look at our list? We have 3 books today. So my book is one I've been talking about this all fall. It is a book called Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara, and he is a manager owner of a very famous restaurant in New York City called 11 Madison Park. I first heard of the restaurant when I saw the Netflix documentary series called 7 Days Out. It was about their relaunch and refurbishment of the restaurant and relaunching it. But this came back on my radar. The restaurant came back on my radar, and Will came back on my radar because of the TV show The Bear. And for a couple of years, I felt like Ted Lasso was every camp person's favorite TV show. And I'm feeling, to me, like The Bear is the new version of that. It's much more sweary, and it's a lot more open conflict, which is interesting about how it resolves itself, but how they come together as a team. It is both family and workers coming together as a team. One of the biggest characters in this is Cousin Richie, and Richie gets sent off to basically apprentice for a week for being front of house in a restaurant in a very famous restaurant, made up restaurant in Chicago that has this. It's based on 11 Madison Park. And one of the things, this nighttime thing, is reading this book, and is a big book, the yellow cover with not bright, but thick black and white reading. So you look at the cover, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I have to buy that because I know it's good. It is so great. It is so good that I have had to put it aside because I can't absorb anymore. I have dog-eared, highlighted, written. All the end pages are full of ideas. I have a few of those, lucky enough to find a few of those that relate to camp that have all been tools of the week before, but please go check out this book. I believe it's finally available in libraries now, but we'll also put a link in the show notes to all of this. So if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, you will find the show notes from this and every other episode. But I'm really grateful to the two of you. Thank you for sharing these and giving us some thoughtful stuff to think about and some practical stuff to do as well. In wrapping things up, first of all, Kyrah, thank you for all of this. Chris, I appreciate your wisdom as always. Some of you, this was the first thing of the season, so it's hard to pick up on some patterns. But Joe and Gab are going to be in and out this year. It's going to be Chris and I consistently with guests. So, thank you very much to Joe and Gab, who have been podcasting now with me for 14 years. I will miss having them on as much as I love Chris is the addition to the team, and I look forward to having conversations with both of them on the regular. That is an opportunity, though, for you. If you're interested in being a podcast host, reach out to me, Travis, at gocamp.pro. I'll send you the sign-up form. Kyrah, thank you for being the first guest of this season. We're grateful to have you.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If people want to follow up with you on some of the stuff you said or learn more about LEAD, how can they get in touch, please?
So your best bet of getting in touch with me directly is emailing me at Kyrah, Kyrah, at leadnow.org. You can also visit our website, leadnow.org. We have tons of free resources for camp professionals, pre-recorded webinars, toolkits, policies, guides, everything that you can imagine. So always take advantage of the free tools that are out there and ready for your usage.
That is great. Thank you so much, Kyrah. I'm grateful to have you, and I appreciate everything you brought to this conversation. For those of you who are listening or watching on YouTube, again, reviews are great. If you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up and some comments or questions. We will make a point of answering those there in the comments. I can send questions or comments to Chris and Kyrah if they're directed at them. I want to take a second. Please go to YouTube and search for Go Camp Pro, where you can find all of our podcasts and lots of other things that we do too there. We would appreciate your subscription to that, especially if you're watching this there for the first time. I want to take 1 second before we go and highlight one of the other shows on the Go Camp Pro network. And today I want to focus on Camp Code. I've been hearing throughout our house the planning that is going into this season of Camp Code, and they're going to do some amazing things. So if you have something that you want to consider how to help train your staff to do that, how to give that level of intention to your staff, Camp Code's whole job is staff training. And so we encourage you to search in your podcast app for Camp Code. Thank you both for today, and thanks for the evening, friends.
The CampHacker podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.